अस्सलाम वालेकुम, वेलकम टू पैसा बोलता है विद अंजुम इब्राहिम। इमरान खान साहब ने अपॉइंट किया था हफीज़ शेख को कोई 20 अप्रैल 2019 को, और 6 मई 2019 को उन्होंने अपॉइंट किया था गवर्नर स्टेट बैंक ऑफ पाकिस्तान। ये दो जो जेंटलमैन थे, दे आर द वंस हु नेगोशिएटेड विद इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड, और जो स्टाफ लेवल एग्रीमेंट थी वो 12 मई 2019 को साइन हो गई थी। उसके बाद देयर हैज़ बीन अ बराज ऑफ क्रिटिसिज्म कि जी मुल्क बेच दिया आईएमएफ को, जी हमने जो पॉवर्टी बढ़ी है, जो सब कुछ हुआ है, वो इट्स ऑल लिंक टू आईएमएफ पॉलिसीज़, और ये जो टीम मेंबर्स हैं ये फ़ंड के ही हैं, उन्हीं के कहने पे ये रखे गए थे। ये जो सारी जो एक्यूजेशंस हैं आज हम उनको डिस्कस करेंगे। आई एम वेरी ग्रेटफुल to have Teresa Sanchez. She is the resident representative of the IMF in Islamabad. She is an extremely versatile, and she is very, very succinct in her response. And joining me from Lahore by Skype is also Dr. Hafeez Pasha, who is a former finance minister. What I'd like, Teresa, is for you to say whatever you want to say with respect to the program. And if you could possibly address the issue of the new finance minister who has expressed serious concerns about some aspects of the program.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to outreach the Pakistani society about our work with the Pakistani authorities.
Okay.
Pakistan has just achieve the completion of the second and fifth reviews of the IMF supporting program after a major shock that has been the emergence of the COVID virus. I think this is something that we should be very, very happy about. I mean, we can discuss that during the show. But this completion of the review, the interesting thing is that it has represented a major calibration of the policy and reforms as per sequencing, as per calendar, as per the scope, and of the are envisaged under the program in order to adjust to the situation and the challenges that have been posed by COVID. But the idea is that with these recalibrations is to continue with the implementation of the program to achieve the goals that are needed in terms of tax reform, power sector reform, and strengthening of the institution and the economy. Back to you.
Back to me, okay. Dr. Hafeez Pasha, would you like to comment on that, or shall we go straight into questions?
Oh, let me just, on behalf of the people of Pakistan, thank the International Monetary Fund for their very gracious support at a time when Pakistan was passing through a period of great difficulty after the first attack of COVID-19. The fund put together a very quick and rapid transit facility for Pakistan, and June 2020, Pakistan received a significant quantum of support from the IMF of $1.4 billion. And throughout the period after that, we have had the umbrella of the IMF, and that has facilitated our access to international finance. And more recently, after the agreement on the second to the fifth review, Pakistan was successful in floating $2.5 billion of bonds in the international market, and this was clearly a result of the umbrella provided by the IMF. And of course, finally, we have already received an installment of $500 million from the fund. So thanks once again to the IMF for their support in this very critical period in Pakistan's history.
I don't know how many people would agree with you, Dr. Saab, because a lot of people are criticizing the fund on a range of policies. But let me start with asking Teresa, the major point of difference between your data and the data that is being projected by the government is that in the growth rate of GDP for the current year, you guys are saying 1.5, they are saying 3 3%. This basic difference is going to have obviously major implications for the macroeconomic, associated macroeconomic indicators that you're going to be looking at. On top of that, Shaukat Tareen recently stated that the thrust of the government would be 6 to 7% growth rate. Do you think that A, that is achievable, B, within the program context because of the contractionary policies that are obviously part of the reform agenda? And B, do you think that this recalibration or readjustment that you talk about will obviously start from June when the next review is? Can it be sooner?
Okay, you always manage to ask me several questions in one question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You make my life difficult. No problem. We're gonna connect. I can group them.
Okay.
I mean, the first thing is about the differences in growth projection. I mean, sometimes by different agencies, sometimes produced in a different timing and in the different context. So I think that this is something that is relatively easy to explain and relatively easy to reconcile in the sense that right now at the fund and also as I reflected in the review documents, we have a projection of 1.5% of GDP based on the information that was available at that time when the whole thing was put together. That's, as you can imagine, was a few time before, no?
Okay. Yeah.
So now we're going to have a new review. We are going to have a new review because this is how it works.
When is that scheduled?
Of an economic.
Right. When is that scheduled? Because
it's in the, I mean,
sorry.
It's in the program documents in the review documents. There is a little table with a calendar, tentative calendar, of course. But the idea is to have it done by some point. I mean, I think there is a mention June the 4th.
That's right.
There is a tentative at some point in the summer. I mean, that's the next few months. Let's put it that way, no?
Okay.
And then we will have more information, and we will sit down together again with our counterparts. This is how it works.
Okay.
And we will put together a new macro framework with all of the info that is new, all of the upside risks, all of the downside risks that have been identified at the time that the review documents were put together. And then in most of the cases, these differences are disappearing because then we are getting to something that is more based on that information. So I think that this is comparing things that are not necessarily comparable. What is important is that I mean, we have to be careful about what happened with the third wave of COVID, but in principle, the economy, the Pakistani economy after the first wave, something that we were very worried, rebounded this summer, and instead of a very complicated scenario that we were thinking about originally of a very large negative growth, like contraction. The economy has been maintaining in positive territory, what is very good. And then from there, as you can see in the review documents, if policies are implemented and the consistency in the reforms is maintained, Pakistan could grow back to potential as we are seeing in this in our projection, contingent to the implementation of good policies, of course, no.
Okay.
So this is the first thing. The other thing, and in that sense, connecting with the second question that you have about growth, no, Pakistan has an important potential for growth, and the growth to be successful needs to be inclusive and needs to be sustainable, maintained for a long period of time, for an extended period of time, to create a situation in which investments is implemented and people can have trust in that things are going to be controlled and maintained, and the government has a good strategy. So in that sense, as you can see in the review document, if policies are implemented and the consistency and the reforms momentum is maintained, Pakistan could go back to potential 4-5% of GDP, something like that. But the idea is to maintain that for a long period of time, and to make sure that everybody is benefiting from it.
Okay.
And then what else? Recalibration?
No. Recalibrate. I mean, Is it going to happen? Because you know what you're saying about the growth momentum, and you're saying stay on the program. The issue is that if you start, and it is necessary. I agree with you that the power sector reforms and the tax sector reforms have been too long in coming. I mean, even now we don't have them, and the thrust remains on tariffs being raised. So the actual concern about a lot of the industrialists and of the domestic sector of the households is that they just cannot sustain that kind of a thing. But we'll take a short break here. We'll come back, and then please answer this question if you can. Welcome back. Yes, Teresa, before the break, I asked you a question about the increase in tariffs, specifically electricity tariffs, and the withdrawal of exemptions to the industry, to the personal income tax. They're all complaining about this, and they're all saying that productivity will nosedive.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, let's see. I mean, the first thing is that. The power sector in Pakistan, unfortunately, has been put to an edge because of different reasons. Basically, legacies from mismanagement in the past, political interference, deferment in the adjustment on tariff, you name it. And the situation now is very worrisome. The circular debt stock is 2.5 trillion, and the bleeding continues. That has to be stop. It's a burden on everybody. It's a burden on the economy. It's a burden on the real sector. It's a burden on the budget, on the financial sector. It's very difficult to create an environment of conducive to investment and to trust to the future. You know that you have this burden there.
That's right.
It's a threat for everybody. So the idea is to have a plan and a strategy to fix it over the medium term in a gradual way and applicable to different dimensions, because this is a multi-dimensional problem.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's not about tariff only. It's about strengthening the revenues. Yes, making sure the tariffs are in line with costs according to what the NEPRA determined. The NEPRA is the regulator. They know how to do it, and they should be allowed to do that without political interference. Also, reducing the cost of generation, policy related to renewables, improving the management of this cost, you name it. So this is why. Sorry, Anna, this is very important. And making sure that the burden is shared in a way that is fair, that the segments, the most vulnerable segment of the population, are really protected. I mean, the tariff right now is quite regressive, and the most vulnerable people are not really protected. A lot of people that are getting a affordable tariff, maybe they should not get it. So these rebalances should be also maybe considered and make the more manageable.
Okay, Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to ask her a question, or would you like to comment?
Well, let me take the liberty of commenting on some of the questions and perhaps some of the responses. The first thing is on the growth rate issue. We will soon find, when the estimates for 2019-20 are finalized, that actually the impact of COVID-19's first attack was more severe. The Pakistan Bureau of Statistics had based their estimates up to March 2020, and the worst happened after that. Our research indicates that probably the GDP fell last year by almost 2 percentage points. So the issue is, if the level is now somewhat up, the base being lower, the growth rate could be somewhat higher. So I would not be too surprised if we do manage to get up to 2.5% to 3%.
Okay.
The other issue is with regard to the base numbers for 2020-21, and the resident representative has rightly said that there's a need for updating these numbers because the fiscal deficit, which has been assumed to be 7.1% of the GDP, already the indications are very clear that it will be on the right side of 8.5% of the GDP.
Okay.
Second, the good news is that they had budgeted for an over $4 billion current account deficit, we have done better, and hopefully it will be limited to $2 to $2.5 billion this year.
Okay.
The other point is about tax reforms and the issue of the circular debt. Both are very serious issues. Can I humbly suggest that the reform process has been clustered too much? There is a need for sequencing it skillfully so that we have the implementation capacity as well as the political strength to be able to implement. This is a government with a razor-thin majority. So my own suggestion would be that in the first phase, let us go ahead and implement the most progressive part of the income tax reforms. And the recent work that we have done with the UNDP clearly shows where there are major gaps which can be filled up very quickly. Thereafter, we could move on to some of the more complex issues of sales tax reform. On the power tariff issue, let me suggest that lumping it so quickly into, say, almost a period of maximum of 3 months or so may actually have a big shock on exports and industry. And my own suggestion would be that while we do need to raise tariffs, perhaps they can be spread out somewhat more over 21, 22. Overall,
the program ends on September. In September is the last review.
22. September 22.
Yeah,
so
22,
still we can do it in 21, yes. 21, 22. Okay. The point is, yes, the reforms need to be undertaken, but my own plea would be that please ensure we have the capacity and we can sequence them skillfully so that they are implemented at the least cost and the greatest benefit to Pakistan.
Teresa, you guys are running out of time, right? I mean, if it's September 22 is the last review scheduled, is there any chance that it'll be further, the program is extended? Because if you do that, then you come up against the elections, which are in 2023. So there is definitely, sort of a trade-off. What do you think?
The first thing that I would like to clarify is that the current programs belong to the authorities. This is their program. We are only just supporting it.
Okay.
So the program can be as long as they want, as long as they wish, as long as the Pakistani people want. I mean, the support by the IMF is coming in this type of 3 years type of formula, but the program can continue if its implementation, if the Pakistani authority decided so. I hope they decided so, because these are reforms that will need to be continued. Okay. Reforms process on a continuous basis. The reality is changing all the time. You have to continue reforming. You have to continue improving and adjusting to the new reality. So this is the first thing. Okay. And then the second thing is that after this program, if the authority decide to continue engaged, I mean, this is up to them. I mean, IMF, we are here at the service of the Pakistani people, so it's up to them. This is one thing. So I don't think we should try to make kind of sense about dates. It's important to have a medium-term. And then in that sense, I would like to add also a reaction to Dr. Pasha that, I mean, the sequencing is good, but also needs to focus on institutions, on the rule of the game, on the governance, on how things are done.
Agree.
That's why it's important. It's important to have a plan. It's important to have a circular debt reduction plan, for instance, in the case of the power sector. It's important to have a new NEPRA Act, a new regulatory body that is making decisions with no political interference for the own good of the sector, like in many other countries, because in that sense Pakistan is just catching up with other countries. So this is something that is important for Pakistan to put together the foundation for a better policy making for the future. And I think that this has to be done now, as soon as possible. And it's a learning by doing process. So you put the new legislation, the new system, and then people will be much happier because they will have a predictability about how things are going to be done and not under the discretion of a certain politician. I think this is very good, and it's one of the value added of the IMF program right now. Back to you.
Are you engaged at all with members of the opposition?
I mean, you mean myself? I mean,
well, the fund.
Yeah. We try to reach out as many stakeholders as possible. I think that unfortunately COVID has been a major
annoying
factor. I'm not able to travel all over Pakistan as I used to do. I used to go to Peshawar, to Faisalabad, to Karachi, to Lahore. Now I cannot do that. I do that through this kind of WebEx or other type of means.
Okay.
But
but you're in touch with the Pakistan People's Party. You're in touch with Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, right? With some people there.
Yeah, and also they know how to find us. Also, if they want to. I mean, we are here at the disposal of everybody. Different type of.
All right.
And yeah.
Okay, we'll take a short break here. Please stay with us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Teresa, I'll go on to one other major point, which is actually attributed to as IMF condition, which relates to the State Bank of Pakistan and the amendment bill. Now, while I do understand your focus on making the State Bank autonomous, because I think finance ministers have played havoc with their with actually controlling the monetary policy, but I don't really quite understand giving them the sole responsibility of inflation, of controlling inflation, because they for 2-3 reasons. One, obviously Pakistan is a very large informal sector which does not come under the purview of any policy. Two, the State Bank's discount rate is mainly focused on large-scale manufacturing sector, and that plummeted after the discount rate was raised to 13.25%. And third, of course, is a statement that was made repeatedly by the governor, and he also had a whole section in one of his reviews that there are supply-side issues. There are obviously those people who are, well, the Prime Minister refers to them as the mafia, but those who form cartels and raise the price. I think that Dr. Pasha is supportive of this or not. I mean, if you want to add any opinion or question with respect to the State Bank, and then I'd request Teresa to answer.
Okay, I'll come in and say that I was one of the architects of the reform in the late 90s, when the IMF of that time asked us to give more autonomy to the State Bank of Pakistan. And if I may be slightly facetious, if you allow me,
Sure.
The Prime Minister, when I first spoke to him, at that time, he said to me, Dr. Pasha, what is this? How
now,
can
which
I give
Prime
autonomy
Minister is that? It was...
Please allow me not to name him. You will be able to link up.
But it's not Imran Khan, right?
No. Okay. This is in the 90s.
Okay.
And when we did the major amendment to the 1956 State Bank Act, it happened in the late 90s.
Okay.
And the Prime Minister turned around and told me, Dr. Pasha, I've got 2/3 majority. I can print as much money as I want.
Okay.
So you can understand the perceptions that are there traditionally in the political system. So there is clearly, I agree, a need for fiscal and financial discipline in the system.
That's right.
However, there are two considerations which are very important. One is that we have to recognize the constitutional supremacy of the National Economic Council, which is the primary body for deciding on targets in the annual plan. So the inflation target as well as the growth rate target ought to be set by the National Economic Council, which is chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister. And in his collective capacity, they are able to set the rate. And the State Bank's governor sits on the council. So this should be a natural process. Second point I'd like to make is, while I totally agree with the need to ask the Secretary of the Finance Division to cease to be a member of the board so that the State Bank has more operational autonomy, I was very, very particular about the establishment of the Fiscal and Monetary Policies Coordination Board. This board we need for coordination purposes between the two policies. And if there is an issue of the hierarchy, maybe we can have the two of them as co-chairpersons. But we need to have, believe me, a fiscal and monetary policies coordination board. And finally, the only other issue that I'd like to emphasize is the need for explicit statement of accountability of the State Bank of Pakistan to the National Parliament, particularly the quarterly and annual reports to be looked at by the Finance Committee. And the normal accountability processes should apply to senior officials of the State Bank. Otherwise, yes, somewhat more autonomy, but within sensible and operational limits.
Right. Yes, Teresa.
Yeah, I mean, first thing, I mean, I'm not an expert on central banking regulation. We have a lot of experts at the fund that have been working with the Ministry of Finance and the State Bank of Pakistan on these amendments. Amendments that, in my view, are overdue. I mean, Pakistan is just catching up with what is basic central banking best practices. Many countries, peer countries, other emerging markets similar to Pakistan, they did these transitions. I mean, sometime 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's in the benefit of countries to have a strong central bank with a strong legal framework that provides the room to implement monetary policy and to be accountable, of course, no, and to have a different type of relationship with the Treasury. It was about time to happen that in Pakistan. And this is something that we have been suggesting to Pakistan for years.
That's
so
right.
We are very happy that this is happening now. It's very healthy to have this debate. I'm very happy that people are asking questions, and this is part of the debate, and for everybody to be convinced at the end this is the best way to go. I mean, I think Dr. Pasha made a very specific mention to different type of areas, but I mean, for instance, in the case of the monetary policy, the autonomy is to the implementation of the monetary policy. The monetary policy targets, etc., could be determined at a different level because this is something that is responsibility of the government. But the state bank should have the autonomy to implement policies. That is different from setting the policy. That's why National Economic Council or whatever other entities who have an important role, of course. And the coordination, the same thing, the coordination can happen at different level, but to happen at a different entity that is determined with the Central Bank of Pakistan, the State Bank of Pakistan should do, is something that is not recommended according to best practices. That's why it's important to have this coordination at a different level and not with a specific board that is there. I mean, there are many other considerations that I could explain, but it could take too long. But good news that Pakistan is moving in this direction.
You think it's a good thing? Okay. Dr. Saab, any other questions?
No, all that I would like to say is I'm a bit concerned about the fund's projections. You see, everything goes well, reforms get fully implemented, perhaps with a somewhat of
and the COVID, the third wave kind of fizzles out.
The third wave fizzles out gradually, I hope. The point is that September 22, around the time when the fund leaves, we are actually financially, according to the fund's projections, not significantly better off. And the reason for that is that
the debt sustainability is, sorry, go ahead.
Precisely 22-23 onwards, we are reaching a peak, an all-time peak in debt servicing, approaching $15 billion.
Dr. Saab, let me go to Teresa. I've got 1 minute left, and let's ask her if she can respond to that. Yes, Teresa.
Well, first of all, is that we are not leaving. Pakistan will be a member of the IMF as long as they want. So maybe there will be different type of engagement. Could be very strong. Not necessarily has to be under. I mean, so it's up to them. So we are not leaving. That's the first thing. We are all the time helping Pakistan in whatever modality Pakistan decided.
Okay.
Program, no program, etc. So the other thing is that the projections are contingent on policies. So if the policies are not implementing, of course, these projections are not going to happen, are contingent on policy. We are not trying here to guess the future. We don't have a crystal ball. What we know is that if the policies are implemented and the world is behaving in the way we believe, these projections are achievable. If as we move and for the next review that we are going to do soon, we have new data, we see that things are moving in another direction, then we will make a different type of projection. Macroeconomics is something alive. It's like driving a car. You always have to be looking for new information and adjust it continuously. So I don't think that this is a problem for that.
Okay.
So we will have probably
one final question, Teresa.
In a few months. Yeah.
One final question. Have you been approached already for a review in terms of the timing of the reforms in the power sector or the tariff raises that were agreed with in February this year? Has anybody contacted the fund? Has there been any because
let me explain how it works. I mean, we are having a daily contact with the Pakistani authorities. So we are all the time talking to them. So it's not like when people say are you approached? I mean, we are approached all the time. We have a very kind of strong engagement at the technical level and
your office is in the Ministry of Finance, right?
Yes, not right now. We are now working from home because of COVID. Hopefully, we will be able to go back to that space soon. That's my goal and my estimate. Maybe after the summer. But so we are working on that scenario, and we have not been approached to anything. We have not been requested to anything. We are going. I mean, for us, I can say that the way we work is that we are getting ready for the next review. And the program is in place. The goals are very clear. We believe are needed for Pakistan. So we are here at the service of the Pakistani counterparts, and we are ready to do as much as possible to help them.
Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you, Dr. Saab. I know you're not well, and thank you for coming. And Teresa, of course, thank you very much. ख़वातीन हज़रात, आपने सुना कि डॉक्टर साहब थे जिस पे मैं सपोर्ट करती हूँ कि सीक्वेंसिंग जो को ज़रा एक्सटेंड करनी चाहिए. वो कह रही हैं वी रिमेन इंगेज, दिस इज़ द गवर्नमेंट्स प्रोग्राम. हम तो सिर्फ यहाँ बैठ के सपोर्ट करते हैं, हम तो कोई इनिशिएट नहीं करते हैं. इन अ वे शी इज़ राइट, बट हमारी इतनी ज़्यादा हमारी इकोनॉमिक कंस्ट्रेंट्स हो गई हैं कि वी नीडेड द फंड सपोर्ट. और वो फंड सपोर्ट के बगैर एक चीज़ हमें याद रखनी चाहिए कि फ़ंड अगर हमारे पास ना आता तो हम जब बाहर भी बोरो करते, जैसे डॉक्टर साहब ने शुरू में कहा, अगर हम बाहर बोरो करते बाहर से टू मीट आवर नीड्स, उसमें भी हमें फिर जो इंटरेस्ट रेट है वो बहुत हाई होता. तो ये आज हमारी नीड है. आगे क्या होता है ये हमें देखना होगा, मगर जो डेट सर्विसिंग है वो बहुत बढ़ गई है. जो हमारी डोमेस्टिक डेट है जी वो तो इस गवर्नमेंट के दौरान बहुत बढ़ी है. 16.5 ट्रिलियन थे जब ये आए थे और ये ले गए हैं 23.7 ट्रिलियन पे जस्ट टिल सितंबर लास्ट ईयर. तो बहुत मुश्किल वक्त है मेरे लिहाज से. तो आई कीप ऑन सपोर्टिंग दिस कि जी एक्सपेंडिचर्स कट करेंगे, गेट एवरीबडी टू सैक्रिफाइस, एंड नॉट only sacrifice in terms of कि जी पे रेज नहीं मिलेगा, मगर sacrifice in terms of massive slashing, उसके अलावा काम नहीं है. और जब आप टैक्स को हाथ लगाएंगे, टैक्स के exemptions लेंगे, उसमें जैसे भी अगेन डॉक्टर साहब ने कहा, it will have repercussions on the national output and GDP, and with that with all the other macroeconomic indicators. इजाज़त दीजिए इसी के साथ. खुदा हाफिज़.